We thought it was just another sunset boots sinking into soft dirt, air too calm, too kind, and that was the first lie. The horizon glowed gold, yet in my chest a cold shadow was already waiting. The Humvee hummed steady, almost soothing, like a lullaby before the storm. I leaned back against the seat blind to the fact that the engine's song was counting down. Jackson's laugh tore through the night, too loud, too alive, reckless. Sparks lifted into the black sky, and even now, I hear them hiss, fading like his voice. Diaz stayed silent, knife-scratching wood eyes unshaken. His quiet was our anchor, unbreakable, or so we thought, until silence itself shattered. I unfolded the letter again, creased fading fingerprints ground deep. Each word tethered me to home, but the rope was fraying. Strand by strand, the forest whispered, low branches creaking, shadows shifting. We ignored it, convincing ourselves that paper plans were stronger than the dark. Oil, leather, steel, the cabin stank of it, heavy, suffocating. My hand traced the rifle's stock, solid, familiar, but in truth it was already a coffin. Stars blinked above, cold, indifferent, eternal. We laughed beneath them, fragile, pretending the night belonged to us, and not to something waiting. Helmets in a row, rifles stacked neat order, sharp as glass. We mistook that order for safety, and safety for survival. My last steady breath, cool air filling lungs, chest rising slow. I didn't know then. It was the final good moment before everything broke open. The rifles gleamed under harsh light, polished too clean for war, the scent of gun oil, heavy enough to choke. We stood among them like believers, clinging to paper promises. Jackson's grin cut through the stale air, reckless and bright, a flame daring the darkness to try. For a heartbeat, I believed it might hold. Diaz's silence was louder than words, steady as stone, his stillness a fortress against doubt. We leaned on him without ever saying it. We were not numbers on a sheet, but brothers forged in drills, sweat and bruises. Every scar tied us tighter, binding us into one. The map looked neat, arrows and circles drawn in tidy ink. Too neat to match the dirt and fire waiting outside. In and out, the orders promised 2 words that looked harmless on the page. But inside them, graves were already written. Doubt was heavy, but belief was easier, and I chose it. Hope was fragile, but it was all I had left to carry. The room smelled of stale coffee, cigarette ash, and dust in the corners. Ordinary scents, yet that night they pressed like warnings. Jackson leaned close, his grin sharpening into something fierce. His eyes said more clearly than words, "I'll walk through fire with you." Diaz pulled his straps tight, every buckle locked with precision. He acted as if destiny could be controlled with discipline. My boots groaned against the concrete floor, each creak a reminder of the march ahead. Waiting felt heavier than moving. They spoke of resistance like it was small, shrinking danger into tidy lines, but I knew danger never fits inside a sentence. The bold letters on the mission sheet glared at me, black scars carved into white. But faces around me mattered more than ink. Smoke curled from Jackson's last cigarette, twisting fragile ribbons into the air. Hope looked exactly like that thin vanishing. Diaz rolled his Zippo in his hand, thumb smoothing the scar on its side. That scratch meant more than the mission itself. My pack already bit into my shoulders, straps grinding until my skin burned. It wasn't just gear, it was dread disguised as weight. Jackson cracked a joke, stupid and clumsy, but we all laughed. Not because it was funny, but because laughter was the only shield left. Fluorescent lights buzzed harsh above us, humming like trapped insects. That sound drilled into my head and never left. Diaz's gaze found mine across the table, sharp and unyielding. In his silence was an oath, "I will not leave you." Circles on the map looked harmless, fragile loops of ink. But to me, they were jaws already closing around us. The air was thick with sweat, leather, and steel, ordinary smells that never left a barracks. That night, they felt like omens. My fingers traced map edges, memorizing every fragile line. Deep down, I knew those lines would vanish in smoke and fire. Jackson folded a worn photo into his pocket, its edges bent from too many times unfolded. He stared too long, as if paper could breathe. A hand struck my back firm and grounding, anchoring me in silence. That touch carried more than the entire briefing. None of us said it aloud, but we believed we'd all come back. Belief was oxygen, and we inhaled it until our lungs hurt. I pulled my straps tighter, canvas cutting deep into skin. It wasn't armor, but I pretended it was because lies were lighter than fear. Arrows on the map pointed forward, bold and straight. They made destiny look simple, but blood bends every road. My chest carried more than bullets. It carried trust heavier than steel. The blind faith of brothers pounded with every heartbeat. Silence thickened in the barracks, stretching tight like a rope before it snapped. Still someone hummed low, a song soft as prayer. Jackson tapped his rifle butt against the floor rhythm, steady and sharp. It echoed like a heartbeat, binding us closer. Diaz chambered his weapon with deliberate calm metal, sliding smooth. Every click was ritual discipline, holding chaos at bay. I pulled air deep into my lungs, stale and bitter. It wasn't courage I breathed in, only the illusion of it. My eyes swept the room, capturing each face in memory. It was the last time I saw them whole, untouched. On paper, danger was still only ink, silent and neat. But paper burns fast and ink fades quicker than screams. We stepped into the night together, boots striking in rhythm. A family bound by trust, walking blind into jaws unseen. The night hung low, pressing on our shoulders, the air soaked with damp soil and the sour reek of oil. Each bootstep cracked too loud in the silence, and I felt it tighten around us like a wire drawn to breaking. Trees swayed in a breeze that shouldn't have been there, leaves whispering secrets too quiet to name. I caught Diaz glancing once at the shadows, his calm face finally touched by doubt. Jackson hummed under his breath, that broken tune he always carried, but even his voice sounded strained. The melody cracked in the dark, too fragile for the weight pressing around us. The map had promised straight roads and clear lines, yet the path twisted, swallowed by fog and black timber. Arrows on paper never accounted for how darkness swallows everything. My rifle felt heavier than before, stock biting deeper into my palm. It wasn't the weapon's weight, it was the dread seeping into my bones. A branch snapped far off, sharp as a shot, and every head turned. The forest fell quiet again, too quickly, silence pressing like a hand over the mouth of the world. My breath echoed inside my helmet, loud and ragged, and I hated the sound. I wanted to tear it away, but the dark kept pushing me back into it. Jackson whispered a joke to himself, but this time no one laughed. Even he didn't smile after just stared into the trees as if they were staring back. The mud sucked at my boots, slow and sticky, every step louder than it should have been. Each sound felt like a signal, carrying farther than we wanted. Diaz tapped the side of his helmet as though testing for static, but said nothing. His silence was no longer armor, it was warning. The air shifted colder, damp breath against our skin, though the night hadn't promised frost. My gut clenched, knowing nature itself was no longer right. We stopped at a clearing map, unfolded lines glowing under red light, but the terrain around us was wrong shapes, not matching any symbol. My hand tightened on the strap of my pack until the leather bit deep. Pain was better than the silence, better than waiting for it to break. Somewhere beyond us, metal clanged, once hollow, out of place. The forest swallowed it, as if mocking us for even noticing. I tried to count my breaths, 1, 2, 3, but each breath grew shorter. The rhythm broke, and with it, so did my grip. Jackson looked back at me once, grin gone, replaced by something raw. I realized it was the first time I had seen him afraid. Diaz raised a hand, stopping us listening. The silence deepened around him, unnatural, as if the world itself was holding its breath. A shadow moved across the tree line, but when I blinked, nothing stood there. The absence was worse than seeing it. The taste of iron filled my mouth, though I hadn't bitten my tongue. It was fear rising metallic and sharp from my own body. The map trembled slightly in my hands, not from the wind, but from me. I hated that the paper betrayed the shake in my bones. A faint humming buzzed in my ears, not radio, not wind. It crawled under my skin until I wanted to claw it out. Jackson adjusted his helmet strap again and again, a nervous tick I'd never seen in him before. That small crack showed more than words ever could. Diaz's Zippo slipped from his hand, once clattering against a rock. The sound was too loud, ringing into the night like a flare. My boots struck stone, the echo sharp, bouncing back louder than it should. It was as if the ground itself wanted to betray me. In the fog, trees looked doubled, their branches weaving into figures. For a moment, I thought I saw faces watching, and I couldn't unsee them. My heartbeat thundered so loud, it drowned everything else. I thought the others must hear it too, but no one turned. A single crow cried from somewhere high, harsh and sudden, then silence fell again. The silence after sound was the worst of all. I reached for my canteen water, sloshing metallic on my tongue. Even that tasted wrong, heavy as rust. Jackson stumbled once on a root, caught himself, then laughed nervously. But the laugh cracked empty, breaking into the air without life. Diaz checked his rifle chamber again, though he already knew it was full. Habit turned into ritual into doubt. The moon slipped behind clouds and the path vanished. We stood blind for a moment, each man frozen in the dark. I thought I saw movement along the ridge, flickers too fast for human stride. When I blinked again, the ridge was empty, but my gut screamed otherwise. The air thickened heavy as smoke, though no fire burned. Every breath felt stolen, borrowed from something unseen. We walked again, but slower, our rhythm broken. Boots no longer struck in unison, each step its own lonely sound. In that moment, I knew the plan was already broken. The first crack had split wide open, and none of us could admit it yet. The silence shattered, gunfire erupted without warning, splitting the night wide open. My body froze, breath caught as the world tore apart around me. Muzzle flashes ripped through the trees, bright explosions cutting across darkness. The neat paper plan we trusted dissolved instantly, worthless against fire. Jackson's grin vanished, his mouth open, eyes frantic, face twisted in raw fear. He looked at me once, and I saw a boy instead of a soldier. Diaz grabbed my collar, dragging me hard into the mud, rounds hissed above tearing branches. His calm face didn't crack, but his grip was iron. The forest erupted dirt, spraying trees, splintering smoke rolling thick. It swallowed everything, shadows, men, even my own sense of direction. My ears rang mercilessly, a high piercing scream. Still, the sound of men crying out broke through, names swallowed before they finished. Jackson crawled at my side, mud streaking his face, breath broken, his rifle shook in his hands, confidence burned away in seconds. Diaz fired sharp bursts, precise, steady, his discipline slicing through chaos. But even steadiness couldn't stop the flood drowning us. A flash of white burned across my vision, heat punched my chest, smoke clawed my throat, every breath came sharp, desperate, stolen. The ground convulsed under a blast, roots and dirt raining on our helmets. For a heartbeat, I thought the earth wanted us buried alive. Shapes fell in the chaos, some ours, some theirs, indistinguishable in the storm. In the noise, every body was just silence, waiting. Static tore through the comms voices, cracking apart broken syllables, lost orders. Command was gone, and with it the illusion of control. I pressed my face into mud, heartbeat, hammering louder than the gunfire. The taste was grit, iron, and something bitter I'll never forget. Jackson raised his rifle, firing blindly, bursts uneven. Each shot sounded less like defiance, more like panic, clawing for survival. Diaz yanked me sideways hard, sudden, just as a tree exploded where I'd crouched. Calm had saved me, but it was fraying fast. The air stank gunpowder, thick leaves, burning blood, sharp and metallic. Every inhale was a wound, every exhale a confession. My vision tunneled, edges black center, blinding flashes cut across the dark shadows, moving faster than thought. Men screamed names, voices, raw, broken. The thunder of battle swallowed them, each cry was a goodbye disguised as sound. The map was gone, trampled, lost. Paper never survives fire, only bodies mark the ground when the lines are erased. Jackson pushed forward, crawling low, desperation etched on his face. A photo slipped from his pocket, fluttering like a ghost in the dirt. A blast lit him up, bright, cruel, throwing him sideways. I reached for him, but smoke swallowed him whole before my fingers touched air. Diaz cursed under his breath, sharp and fast, the first crack in his armor. His calm was bleeding, and I knew we were breaking. Bullets sparked against the metal, ricochets shrieking like knives. Fire spat back into our faces, sparks burning into skin and fear alike. I pressed deeper into the ground, wishing mud would take me, bury me safe. Earth felt kinder than the air, alive with fire. A flare burst overhead, red, violent, drenching everything in bloodlight. The forest looked alien, every shadow alive, every tree an enemy. Shapes moved in that glow, too fast, too blurred to name. I fired anyway, praying bullets could kill the dark itself. Diaz's hand clamped my shoulder, steady, brutal, pulling me toward cover. His silence was gone, urgency tearing it away. The ground split ahead, a crater steaming, glowing faintly. Heat scorched my cheek, ash burned my lungs until breath was agony. I stumbled, rifle slipping from my grip, metal clattering loud as thunder. Losing it felt like losing part of myself, naked in chaos. Jackson's voice cracked through thin and ragged. He wasn't calling for orders anymore, he was begging for life he couldn't hold. I glimpsed him again, crawling, broken his photo, lost in the mud. That image burned deeper than any wound I carried. Diaz covered him, short bursts, sharp rhythm, every shot a rope straining to pull him back. The rope was fraying with every second. Shadows pressed closer, muzzles flaring, fire stitching lines across the night. The perimeter was gone, we were surrounded, hunted. My breath tore shallow chest, screaming for air. Each inhale was smoke, each exhale heavy with fear I couldn't hide. I fired until my arms shook, barrel steaming in my hands. It wasn't a weapon anymore, it was a scream thrown into the dark. The ground was littered, helmets, packs, bodies. I stepped over them without knowing if they were friends or strangers. Time warped seconds, stretched like years, then collapsed in blinks. The night bent, folding reality into fragments. Diaz shouted my name, once sharp, fierce. It cut through the chaos like a blade, pulling me back for a heartbeat. A round grazed him, spinning him sideways, blood painting his sleeve. Still he held his rifle hand's unshaken grip, unbroken. Jackson was gone again, swallowed by smoke and fire. My legs wanted to chase, but terror nailed me to the dirt. Another blast ripped the clearing, roots flying, dirt, raining screams echoing. Even the earth groaned under the weight of it. My ears bled with ringing sweat, stung my eyes raw. I couldn't tell where my body ended and the storm began. The squad was shattered, no lines, no formation, only fragments scattered, each man screaming into void and fire. I pressed my hand into Diaz's wound, blood hot flooding my palm. He shoved me away, eyes blazing, "Don't stop, fight." And in that roar, in fire and dark, I knew the truth. The plan was dead, our hope buried. Hell had broken loose, and we were trapped inside it. The gunfire died away slowly, cruelly, leaving only smoke drifting through broken trees. I waited for a voice, a signal, anything. Nothing came. My ears still rang shrill and endless, and in that ringing, I thought I heard names, Jackson, Diaz, but the silence after told me the truth. The ground was a graveyard, helmets overturned, rifles, scattered bodies lying half-sunk in mud. Each shape looked familiar, but none of them moved. I crawled toward where Jackson had fallen, hands trembling, breath catching in my throat. The photo he carried was gone, swallowed by dirt. Diaz leaned against a shattered trunk, blood pouring through his sleeve. His eyes locked on me, steady, unflinching, even as his strength ebbed. I pressed my palm to his wound, hot blood flooding between my fingers. He shoved me off with a grimace, his eyes fierce, telling me to fight, not drown. My heart cracked open, torn between saving him and knowing I couldn't. Every instinct screamed to stay, but the night swallowed us whole. Shadows twisted at the edge of my vision, too fast, too silent. I aimed, but my barrel shook, finger frozen on the trigger. The air thickened with stench, gunpowder, blood-charred bark. Each breath clawed at my chest, every inhale a punishment I couldn't refuse. I whispered their names, Jackson, Diaz, soft broken. Ghosts didn't answer, but I prayed anyway because the living were gone. The comms spat static fragments of orders, broken syllables, voices lost. Nothing human came through, only echoes of a dead plan. I tried to stand, knees trembling, legs failing under the weight of mud and grief. The pack pulled at me, heavy as guilt, heavier than bones. Jackson's laughter replayed in my head, bright, reckless, until it twisted into silence. That silence cut sharper than the bullets had. A flare ripped the sky, drowning us in red. In that merciless light, bodies froze, mid-motion statues carved by death. Diaz tried to raise his rifle arms, shaking like branches in wind. It slipped once, twice, but still he tried because surrender was foreign to him. I wanted to scream, rage, grief, fear clawing inside, but my throat locked tight. The silence in me was worse than the silence outside. The forest pressed close, branches reaching, shadows leaning. I felt hunted, as if the night itself was alive, waiting to strike. Every sound became a lie, every rustle, every crack. My nerves splintered, with each one expecting death from every angle. Diaz's eyes softened for the first time, as though he knew. He tried to smile, but it broke, halfway collapsing into something painful. I clutched his hand, blood slick between us, desperate to hold him in place. His grip faltered, then faded, his silence heavier than any goodbye. A blast echoed far off, deep and hollow, shaking the earth beneath me. I flinched, but the real quake was inside, breaking me apart. The moon broke through clouds, cold, pale light spilling across the dead. The battlefield was no longer war, it was a graveyard. My chest ached with every jagged breath. The ringing in my ears grew sharper, louder, as if it wanted to carve me hollow from within. I closed my eyes, hoping for escape, but darkness there was worse. Flashes burned behind lids. Faces torn steel, twisted ground bleeding. Jackson's photo returned in my mind, creased edges, fading smiles. I reached for it, but like him, it slipped beyond my grasp. My rifle sagged heavier than stone barrel, steaming with spent fury. It wasn't a weapon anymore, only a burden I couldn't drop. The squad, my brothers, were gone. No formation, no voices, no laughter, just fragments scattered in dirt and silence. Diaz coughed blood, bubbling red across his lips. His eyes never left mine, unyielding, fearless, even as the light dimmed. My grip crushed his hand, refusing release, but his weight grew heavier, his breath shallower, until only stillness remained. I wanted to shake him, scream him back alive, but the night gave no mercy. My brother was gone, and I was left with nothing. Silence pressed in thick, suffocating pushing on my chest. I thought it would crush me flat, bury me alive without a shovel. I staggered up, legs quivering, spine bent under grief. Every step forward felt like betrayal, each one dragging me farther from their graves. Mist rose from the forest, white tendrils twisting like smoke. I walked into it blind, my nerves screaming, my shadow breaking apart. Mud clung to my boots, sucking me down. Each pull forward was a fight body begging to stop, spirit begging to collapse. My heartbeat thundered louder than gunfire had ever been. Each pulse reminded me I lived, and survival itself felt like punishment. Behind me, the battlefield whispered wind through helmets, smoke drifting through branches. The silence there was heavier than words, heavier than death. I wanted to turn back, to lie down, to join them in stillness, but my legs dragged me forward, driven by fear or fate. I couldn't tell which. The night stretched endless path, twisting deeper into shadow. The only sound was my own breath, ragged, unsteady, and the ringing in my ears. I whispered again, Jackson Diaz, their names spilling into dark like prayers. The silence that answered was worse than any gunfire. And I knew then the darkest hour wasn't behind me. It was inside me, carved deep, and it would never let me go. The battlefield went still, no gunfire, no screams, only smoke curling above broken trees. That quiet pressed harder than the storm before it. My ears rang sharp, shrill, merciless. Beneath the ringing was nothing, no footsteps, no voices, just absence clawing inside my skull. Smoke twisted into figures, half-formed, almost human. I blinked, reaching for recognition, but every shape dissolved before I could name it. Mud pulled at my boots, thick with blood and rain. Each step dragged heavy, as though the ground itself wanted me to stay. Jackson's rifle lay half-buried, stock splintered, barrel sunk, crooked. It looked abandoned, almost pleading for the hands that would never return. Diaz's Zippo glimmered faintly in ash, the scar across its side catching dying light. I knelt near it, but couldn't bring myself to touch. I whispered their names, Jackson Diaz, over and over, voice breaking thin. The silence swallowed each word whole, leaving me smaller. My hands shook as I wiped mud from my face, but the stain clung. It wasn't mud anymore, it was memory ground into skin. Around me lay helmets, overturned packs, torn letters crumpled and soaked in red. Objects spoke louder than silence, each one a grave in itself. Time stretched, long, cruel each second, dragging across me like a blade. Without chaos, stillness itself became unbearable. My rifle sagged across my chest, dead weight. I thought of leaving it, but fear told me it was the only anchor left. Shadows stretched long across the clearing, bent and warped by smoke. For a moment, I swore they moved, then realized it was me trembling. A scream rose in my throat, raw, desperate, but silence crushed it flat. All that escaped was a rasp, a ghost of sound. I touched the burned wreckage, steel still warm. It pulsed faintly under my palm, like even metal remembered what I wanted to forget. The air reeked iron, sweat, blood, thick and sour. I swallowed hard, but the taste clung to my tongue like a curse. I searched the dirt for tracks, for proof someone else had walked away. The ground gave nothing, only churned mud, only graves. A crow cried sharp above one sound, brief and cruel. When it vanished, the silence deepened, stretching like wire ready to snap. I pressed my palms into my face nails, cutting skin. Pain steadied me. It was the only thing stronger than emptiness. My heartbeat thudded heavy, slow, relentless. It echoed in my ears, proof I lived, proof I was alone. I forced myself to look at their faces one last time, eyes half open, lips parted mid-breath. They had stories unfinished, and I was condemned to carry them. I made a promise, whispered through clenched teeth, I will not let you be forgotten. The words were fragile, but they were all I had. Each step away pulled me farther, heavier, crueler. Mud sucked at my boots as if trying to drag me back to their side. My shadow stretched long in the dim light, thin and hollow. It didn't look like me anymore. It looked like something emptied out. I imagined footsteps behind me, brothers still marching in rhythm. When I turned, only silence followed, wide and merciless. Emptiness burrowed inside me, deeper than lungs or bone. It hollowed me out until nothing was left but guilt. I counted breaths, 1, 2, 3, clinging to rhythm like a rope. Without it, madness pressed closer, eager to take me. The road ahead wound broken through trees bent low. It looked endless, built only for the last man alive. Night crept down, fast shadows thickening. Silence grew with it, heavier, pressing against my chest until I could barely breathe. Stars blinked above, cold, indifferent. They had watched men die before, and they would watch me carry the curse alone. And in that silence, with nothing left but the ringing in my ears, I understood survival was not triumph.
Broken.
Survival was the heaviest wound of all. The world moved on, days stacking into years, but the battlefield stayed inside me. I carried it like a second skin, raw, unhealed. Sleep betrayed me, pulling me back to fire, to screams. I woke, gasping, sweat cold, convinced I was still in the mud. The ringing in my ears never left, constant, sharp, merciless. It was their voices too, twisted into one endless note. Crowds unsettled me, their noise pressing like gunfire. In silence I found no comfort, only echoes of the dead. Jackson's laughter haunted me, broken and bright. It came in flashes, quick, reckless, and then cut short, always cut short. Diaz's silence followed, too steady, unyielding. I still felt his hand on my collar, dragging me from death, dragging me into loneliness. I avoided mirrors. They showed a face I didn't recognize. The man staring back looked older, heavier, carved by ghosts. Every scar on my body carried a name, a place, a story. They weren't wounds, they were reminders etched deep. I walked streets with people who had never heard gunfire. Their laughter felt foreign, like a language I no longer spoke. The smell of oil, of metal, of burning wood, it pulled me back in an instant. My stomach clenched, my hands shook. I kept Jackson's helmet tucked away, dented, blood-stained. I told myself I'd let it go one day, but I never did. Diaz's Zippo sat on my desk, scarred, silent. Some nights I lit it, watching flame dance like a ghost in the dark. The weight of their absence pressed heavier than any pack I'd carried. I walked upright, but inside I was bent, broken. I replayed choices, every step, every glance. What if I'd turned sooner, shouted louder, held tighter? The questions never ended. The battlefield followed me into every silence. Even birdsong seemed wrong, too cheerful, too alive, like the world mocking me. I drank to quiet it, but alcohol only blurred edges. The ghosts waited patiently, stepping closer when the bottle ran dry. Faces stared at me in dreams, eyes glassy, mouths parted. They asked nothing, but I woke with guilt heavier than breath. I carried their names like stones heavy in my chest. Some days I whispered them, other days I kept them locked inside. I tried to tell others, but words failed. How do you explain silence heavier than sound scars, deeper than flesh? Children's laughter cut through me sharp. I wanted to smile, but all I heard was Jackson's voice fading. I walked at night streets, empty shadows long. It was the only time the world felt honest, cold, hollow, unforgiving. My hands trembled when I touched soil, damp earth pulling me back. I dug fingers in half, expecting blood to rise. The weight of survival bent my back, bent my spirit. Living wasn't triumph. It was punishment carved daily. I still smelled the battlefield on windy nights, smoke, blood, rain. No matter how far I ran, the air betrayed me. The scars on my arms itched, burned, reminded me. They weren't healing. They were messages written in flesh. I saw Diaz's eyes in strangers, sometimes steady and unflinching. For a moment, I believed he was still beside me. Jackson's grin flashed in reflections, sudden, cruel. When I blinked, it was gone, only my own tired face staring back. The silence of the battlefield lived inside me, stretching, pressing. It was louder than any war, and it never ended. I whispered again, Jackson Diaz, their names cracked raw. They answered only in memory, only in scars I could never shed. And I knew then, as I know now, the war never ended. It lived in me in the scars that remain in the burden of survival I carry alone.